afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein, and I can be reached at 631-647-4694, or you can visit me on my website at mainstreetplanninggroup.com. When we talk about code, we talk about choice, organization, direction, and education. We offer fixed insurance products all over the country. We have hundreds of financial advisors, CPAs, attorneys that reach out to us for advice on the best insurance planning you can do in the world. Some of the things that we've talked about in the past are guaranteed income for life. You know, there's no better security in the world than having a guaranteed income for life. And you can set that up yourself. As a matter of fact, earlier this week, I had a speaker on one of my seminars, for my professional seminars, who was an expert on settlement annuities. And one of the biggest things she said to me is, and one of the biggest facts that came out of that, is, you know, lottery winners, most lottery winners, 90% of them spend all their money within 2 years and they're bankrupt. It is a phenomenal, insane thing. She also says the same thing for people who have a windfall from an accident and something, they come into a lot of money. But the one thing that they all come back and thank her for, and the courts thank people for, is when they set up an annuity that gives them a guaranteed income so they can cover their expenses. Even my father, who was into investing for 50 years while he was alive, big investment guy, he bought an annuity that gave him a guaranteed income. He says, this is the best thing in the world. Every month, I don't have to think about it. I get a check in my account. You don't have to think about interest rates or anything else. The money is there. What a wonderful tool to have. Today, I want to really focus on value. And I want to talk about something I used to do 30 years ago, or prior to 30 years ago. I was in the candy industry. And I would wholesale bulk candy. I was actually an expert in gummy bears and Starlight Mints. I don't talk about this a lot, but I was talking to somebody earlier this week, and one of the things about gummy bears, it's a blind item. He goes, a blind item? I never heard that phrase. What's a blind item? Well, a blind item is when you go into the supermarket and you buy a bag of gummy bears or pistachio nuts or Starlight Mints, you don't know where that came from. You really don't know if that's going to be a good product or a bad product necessarily. So it's called a blind item. It could be sourced from many different places, those gummy bears or those pistachio nuts. There's many different gradings and qualities and everything else. So it's considered a blind item because when it's sold in bulk and then it's rebagged by many different people, you know, you'll see many different brands out there of candies. And when they rebag it, you really don't know where it came from. So that's why they call it a blind item. Well, I relate that to insurance. Because many people that you talk to, their first response is, do you have life insurance? They say, oh, I have it at work. Oh, you have income protection? Oh, disability? Yeah, I have it at work. What they don't realize is, if they lose that job, or they leave the job for their own reasons, or they become sick and leave the job, they have nothing. You have nothing if it's only at work. Okay, only at work is while you're working. Once you leave work, you leave your benefits. Something to be very careful of. So don't rely on just only at work. That's a big misconception. The other misconception is people buy insurance products, and over the years, they really don't know what they had or what they want. And today I want to talk about value versus price. Value. The best insurance policy in the world. I don't care if it's life insurance, disability. I don't care if it's auto insurance. The best policy in the world, what's the best policy? When it pays for the things you wanted it to pay for, when it pays. That's the best value, not the cheapest price. That's what value is. Value is when it pays, when you need it the most, and who it pays to and how it pays. Is there any problems? I even know from my own experience where we had an auto insurance carrier that was the least expensive for one of my family members and had a bad accident, and it didn't pay a claim, and we had to fight like hell and didn't get what we should have gotten out of this insurance policy. Why? We bought the cheapest, not necessarily the best. Now, the best changes over time. Value changes over time. People don't understand. And the problem with most insurance products, and most people, is they'll buy something, they'll put it in their drawer, and they'll forget about it. Right now, we have a major issue with insurance policies that were bought in the past. I don't care what type of policy it was. First off, if you bought term insurance, and it was the cheapest term or whatever it is, it's great, but it expires at a certain time. And most people don't realize that 2% of all term policies, less than 2%, actually pay a death claim. Well, I'm buying $1 million of coverage, but if it doesn't pay a claim, what good is it? So they don't realize. Or they'll buy a whole life policy. Now, back in the 90s and 80s, whole life policies from the best, strongest carriers were paying 9% dividends, 10% dividends. Those same policies are now paying 4 and 5% dividends. What does that mean to your policy? Well, what it means is that you're relying on those dividends to survive that policy with the premiums you're paying. And if you don't pay enough premiums, the policy kind of eats itself. And with whole life and universal, they work a little different. It may go into loan status. What does that mean, loan status? Well, loan status is an actual loan that you're borrowing from the policy cash values to pay the life insurance premium. Now, many policies a long time ago were sold with the idea that you have a vanishing premium. They don't do that anymore, okay? But they use the term vanishing premium. Well, the problem is vanishing premium only works if the dividends worked. If the dividends didn't work or didn't do as they were proposed, then that vanishing premium comes back in the form of a loan. Now, if the loan gets greater and the loan is too big than the cash value in the policy, it could create the policy to lapse. If the policy lapses, that means you have no coverage. That means you've paid for many years, and when you need it the most, you may not have coverage. And if you say, well, I really don't need this coverage anymore, and you let it lapse, and you have a loan on your policy, you get a tax for all those dividends, all those years that you accumulated and never paid tax on. All of a sudden, there will be a tax. There will be a capital gains tax, an income tax, a big one, okay, which you may not expect. So we have specific policies that rescue those type of policies because as the dividends were paying very high in the past, their internal loan rate was extremely high as well. They kind of went hand in hand. So the newer whole life policies may be paying a lower dividend, but they also have lower loan rates. But you don't know that because you're not an expert like we are. And what happens is when you need the money or when you need to take a loan from your policy, you need to know what that loan rate is. So if that loan rate's higher than what you're getting, you could have problems with your policy. Anyhow, this is Neil Himmelstein, Main Street Planning Group. You're listening to the Main Street Code for Financial Success, and we'll be back after a few minutes. Thank you. Welcome back. You've been listening to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. My name is Neil Himmelstein. I can be reached at 631-647-4694. We're talking all things insurance today, and I can be reached on my website at mainstreetplanninggroup.com. Before the break, we were talking about value versus price, and we talked about having a whole life policy you've had for many years and you've paid lots of money into, but all of a sudden it's in loan status and you can't get out of it, and it might lapse. And if that policy lapses, there are two things that can happen. One, all those premiums and everything you paid all those years are down the wayside. And two, you may even get taxed on top of it. So it could be a lose-lose. When we talk about value, we talk about value is something that's going to pay when you want it to pay. So just because you bought the best policy at the time, that may have been the best features and benefits at the time, if you don't review that policy, things could happen to it. Now, we talked about whole life, and there's ways of rescuing those policies. So you want to come to me when you have that situation where you have some whole lives and there's some debt in it, and you need to work on these policies. That's a very, very big thing that you have to check out. And really, you need to seek out a professional for that. I have accountants and attorneys that reach out to me all the time, but a lot of times it's too late. You know, it's never really too late, but you know what? You address things early in life, and they can be approached. Some of the other things that happen to insurance policies over time, and we talk about this a lot, and we see this very often. People buy an insurance contract, they put it in their drawer, and they don't realize that the beneficiaries they put on that contract are the beneficiaries of that contract forever unless they change it. So why is that a big deal? Well, sometimes people get married, they get divorced, they have children, and life changes. The policy pays to the beneficiary on the policy. It does not go by will. So, very important. If I happen to pass away, I get remarried, my ex-wife possibly would be the beneficiary of $1 million policy, and that may or may not be who I intended the money to go to. Secondly, what we find quite often is they'll name a child as their what they call contingent beneficiary, and that's great, but then they have two more children. Well, those two other children, unless they're named as beneficiary, don't get the benefit of that life insurance policy. Now, what if somebody asked me, leave it to your estate? Well, the problem is if you leave a life insurance policy to your estate, it then goes to your will. Now, what if you don't have a will? Well, then, we discussed that last week. It could go to probate, where an appointed person can determine where that money goes. So, as important as a life insurance policy is, or any of your other insurance policies, so is a will. They all have to work together, they all have to be reviewed, and they all have to be in a place where everyone that you intend to know about it knows where it is. I would recommend that you keep duplicate certified files. One with your attorney, one at home. You notify your next of kin who your attorney is, where things are at home, because you never know when things can happen in life. Things happen. Things happen, and you want to be organized, or you may have a court appointee determine where your stuff goes. And when you're talking about legacy and you're talking about benefits, it's so important to keep up to date, not just with your life insurance policy, any retirement plans you have, or anything else. So continuing on this theme, what's the value or what's the price? Okay, it's not always the cheapest. You hear on the radio, on TV, oh, I can get you $1 million of coverage, a 35-year-old for $500 a month, for $30 a month. Okay, great. What does that represent? Is that policy going to be there for my loved ones when it needs to be? Typically, they're selling a term policy, and they're selling a 10-year term policy, and you sit it in your drawer, and year 11, you're going, okay, what do you have now? Oh, nothing. Oh, I still have this policy. No, you don't. It's gone after 10 years unless you convert it. We talk about conversions a lot because you want a term policy that you know you can convert to something permanent. Why is that important? Because when you have a good conversion privilege inside your life insurance policy, they will convert it at the health you were when you took the original policy out. So if I'm 20 years old and I'm healthy as a horse and things are going great, I have best class, the cheapest price and everything else, and I buy $1 million a term, and great, I'm prepared, I get married, all of a sudden I come down with an illness and it's kind of impactful and things happen. I have the privilege with a good policy of converting it to something that will last me a lifetime and I won't have to worry about it. Very important. If I don't have that privilege, that's a problem. Many of the group term policies that you get at work, you cannot necessarily convert. And if so, the most expensive conversion to the lousiest thing. So just because you have insurance at work does not mean you're covered. I can't express that enough. So, value versus price. Review all your policies. Go over them with us. While we have a few more minutes, I want to talk about one other story in my life, and I could really talk about a whole program about this. When my brother turned 65, 5 years ago, he was a doctor, and we had a birthday party. I'm the youngest of 5 boys, and the oldest one had passed away from AIDS. And then when the middle child turned 65, we all visited him for his birthday. Now, at the time, we were like, what should we buy him? What should we buy him? And I said, why don't we get him a Fitbit? Now, he's a doctor, and he's very into it, and we got him a Fitbit. A month later, he called me up and he said, listen, if I get you a Fitbit, would you wear it? I said, okay. Well, what happened is 3 brothers now, one that was older than him and me, we all started competing. We started competing for our health. We started communicating every day. Even though we live in 3 different states, we start competing for our health. And guess what? My brother that was 65 had stage 3 stomach cancer. And it was the best thing in the world for him because he was communicating. He wasn't thinking about his cancer and his sickness. His health was getting better. Even while going through chemo, my blood pressure dropped, okay? My cholesterol lowered. I lost 15 pounds. My brother, who had an autoimmune up in Arizona, his health got much better. And every day we were competing on health and we were communicating. Wellness is so important. Whatever it takes for wellness, very important. As a matter of fact, there's an insurance company 5 years ago, John Hancock, that started a process called Vitality. They actually, if you track your health and you take a vested interest in your health, they realize that you have a 4 or 5 year more life expectancy than if you don't. And they actually reward you in their policies if you buy one of their policies, and you actually get a discount if you track your health and you reach your goals. And they give you prizes along the way. What an amazing thing that wellness ties in to price and value. Thank you. You've been listening to The Code for Main Street, The Code for Financial Success. This is Neil Himmelstein. I can be reached at 631-647-4694. MainStreetPlanningGroup.com is my email address. Thank you again. Have a great weekend. I look forward to speaking to you soon. With so many people living longer, the fear of outliving your money becomes a reality for many of us. Will I be a financial burden? Will I outlive my money? How will I be remembered? My name is Neil Himmelstein, president of Main Street Planning Group. Please contact me by visiting mainstreetplanninggroup.com. That's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. I will introduce you to strategies that will guarantee you will not outlive your money, that can guarantee you will not be a burden on your loved ones. Through a collaborative approach, we will uncover solutions that offer tax-efficient strategies, lifetime income, and legacy planning, choice, organization, direction, and education. That is the code we stand behind. Contact mainstreetplanninggroup.com, that's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. And listen to me every Friday at 3 p.m. as I host the Main Street Code for Financial Success, right here on 103.9 LI News Radio.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.